Jeffrey Smith joins us this hour to bring us up to date on the horrible GMO war that is being fought against our health and our future. And it is obviously adding up every minute of every day, every second of every day, amongst all of those who are consuming these toxic, in many cases ultimately deadly, concoctions from Monsanto and others. They're crazy. They're insane. The old TV commercial, "It's not nice to mess with Mother Nature," is coming home to roost. Jeffrey, welcome back, and I would say Happy New Year, but it's let's call it an encouraging New Year, at least with you on board.
We'll do that.
You're here, and as long as we've got you, we've got a shot. Every movement, every organization needs a leader, and whether you want to be or not, you're it.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
I wrote something this morning and posted it on our Facebook and blog. It's breaking news from yesterday, so I think I'll start with that.
All right.
And it gives me an opportunity to give the listeners, we've been with this show, for I don't know how many months and years, but
yeah,
a lot of the people listening have a lot of deeper understanding of the problems of genetically engineered foods than others. But it gives me an opportunity to bring different angles and different stories to this listening audience. And so tonight, I'm going to start out being more technical than usual, and I'll do it slowly so that I don't lose anyone. I'm sure it's not going to be difficult to follow, but it's very interesting, the information that was broken yesterday or actually I think Sunday night as news. There's a newly discovered component in most genetically engineered crops that was there all the time. It's part of a virus. It's part of a viral gene. It's a viral gene, in fact, and it may be promoting diseases. And none of the regulators looked at it until very recently.
Are we sure? Are we sure of that? Are we sure?
Well, no, we're not sure of it. Someone asked me that question today. No, I mean, unless they're trying to kill us, and I'm not going there right now. This thing is very, very dangerous. And the scientist who alerted me in his press release, in his article, called for an immediate recall of most of the genetically engineered crops in the market as a result of this discovery.
Wow. You mean in other words, it's pan available. It's not just in one GMO crop. It's in multiples.
It's in 54. It's in 54.
Oh, my. The same virus? The gene for this virus? All right.
Let me explain it, because I'm going to go through it slowly so we don't lose anyone, because this is interesting information. I like the technical stuff, and I rarely get a chance to go into it, and so I'm happy to do it as a change of pace. When you insert, let me even start even earlier. When a plant or a human DNA is functioning, there's an on and off symphony. Certain genes turn on a certain level, they turn off a certain level, they go higher and lower based on the needs of the cell. And they're turned on by promoters. And the promoters are integrated into the intelligence of the organism so that they're like little rheostats determining how much DNA produces RNA, how much RNA is produced, and how much protein is produced. And so it's all orchestrated very, very carefully and brilliantly and way beyond our understanding.
Wow. So now, just one quick thing, if I might, for our listeners. A rheostat is something that can emit variable and varying amounts of something, energy, or in this case, whatever the particular gene is responsible for. It's not just an all-on and all-off switch. That's how sophisticated this whole thing is.
Like a dimmer. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's all orchestrated in great detail and complexity, and it's dictated by the needs of the organism. But when you take a gene, let's say from a soil bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis, which produces its own toxic insecticide, and you want to put it in corn, you stick that into the corn. If all you did was put the gene into the corn, there's no way that the needs of the cell will dictate how many proteins it produces, or what level of protein it produces, how often it is on, because it's not integrated into that complex structure. It's completely new. There's no promoter, there's no nuance, and so what they do is they attach to that gene a promoter from a virus. And this promoter from a virus is called aggressive because what it does is it turns on the gene to which it's attached at a high volume 24/7. So irrespective of the needs of the cell, this gene will be on. The gates will be open. It'll be fully on.
Wow.
So when it's inserted, it'll be producing as much Bt toxin as it can, and it'll be flooding this protein into every single cell of the plant and every plant in millions of acres.
It's a rogue gene with no controller.
Well, yeah, it's basically external control designed by engineers to just basically a blank open door on switch. Now, the cauliflower mosaic virus is a virus that affects cauliflower and certain plants, and they take the promoter out of the virus, so they take a section of the genetic code from that virus, which normally turns on the virus, and this promoter happens to work not only in viruses, but also in plants, and also in bacteria, in mammals and humans, and it's very aggressive. Now, there's been a lot of concern, and there's many reasons why people are concerned about this cauliflower mosaic virus promoter, but every time someone raises the fact that viruses are being inserted into GM crops like soybeans, the biotech industry jumps in and says, oh, no, it's just the viral promoter. It's not the virus itself. It's just the on switch. There's nothing to worry about. Don't worry your little head. Well, when regulators in Europe finally got around to evaluating the genetic sequence for the viral promoter, they found that it would also contain the sequence of a gene from the cauliflower mosaic virus called gene 6. It actually overlapped with the promoter sequence. So part of the gene started in the middle of the promoter. Now, this gene 6 is long enough, and after they evaluated it, they could not rule out that it would be active. Now, if it's active, what it could be doing is producing proteins called viral proteins. Now, when viruses produce protein, they work together. The virus is intending to cause an infection in the organism, and the proteins dismantle the organism's defenses against viral infection. So if you were to drink a can of viral protein, your ability to fight off colds, hepatitis, AIDS, any virus could be deeply compromised or eliminated. Now, what this means is that in 54 genetically engineered crops, and that includes the most popular ones, which is Roundup-ready soybean, Roundup-ready corn, the most popular Bt toxin-producing corn, all of these use the cauliflower mosaic virus promoter, and they all have this section of a significant section of gene 6 there, which means it might be producing a viral protein that we're consuming, which is could dismantle our viral defenses. That's point one. Point two, viral proteins can also dismantle or attack or hurt basic cell functioning. In other words, they can create toxic reactions. They might promote cancer, for example. Because there's been over 100 studies of viral proteins that show that it can be toxic or break down viral defenses. And so the same protein that may be produced inside these crops can also potentially cause toxic reactions and diseases. So that's point two. Now, point three. Gene 6 has another characteristic that allows it to turn on other genes downstream and turn it on permanently 24/7 so that it pumps out whatever there happens to be just downstream of where it's inserted. So if you happen to have a coding sequence, in other words, if you happen to have base pairs or part of the DNA that can produce proteins, and they happen to be near gene 6, then all of a sudden it's producing proteins, and it could be not just that, but several of them. Now, when you produce proteins at random, that's a real genetic roulette, because the proteins can be allergens causing potentially deadly allergic reactions. They can be toxins. They can be carcinogens that can lead to cancer. They can be anti-nutrients, meaning that they block the absorption of nutritional substances. Or they can be regulatory genes where they in turn regulate the expression of dozens or 100 genes. So when you randomly switch something on, you can wreak havoc. Now, when you insert the gene into GM crops, you don't identify which neighborhood to put it in and then ask permission and park the car in the driveway. What you do is you put the gene cassette, which includes the, let's say in this case, the Bt toxin gene, plus the cauliflower mosaic virus promoter at the beginning and a stop switch at the end, which tells the cell stop reading, the gene ends here. So you put this genetic cassette, you make millions of copies, you put it into a gun, you shoot that gun into a plate of millions of cells, hoping that some of those genes make it into the DNA of some of those cells, and they only make it into a few, but you don't have any control over where in the DNA your gene cassette is integrated. And that means that you have no idea which genes are just downstream of this insertion, which might be turned on. And so you have 54 different commercialized genetically modified varieties, each with the genes inserted into different places, which means each one of them is potentially a ticking time bomb. Not a ticking time bomb, it might be spewing out already who knows what. Toxins, allergens, carcinogens, anti-nutrients, regulatory elements, maybe something good, we don't know. So in this case, we have not only the viral proteins being produced, which can dismantle viral infections and cause direct toxicity, but unknown genes could be flooding into these crops that can produce who knows what.
Absolutely.
All right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's 3. Now, 4. The only human feeding study ever published on GMOs, actually until recently when they did something on children, which was a horrible thing, they found that genes can transfer to the DNA of gut bacteria and potentially continue to function.
Forever.
When you have... Yeah, in other words, you instead of having the corn produce the toxic insecticide, you can have your own gut flora be producing the toxic insecticide if it does, in fact, transfer. We know that the Roundup Ready soybean gene transferred in part to gut bacteria and appeared to continue to function. So and we also know that when that study was done, not only did the Roundup Ready gene transfer to gut bacteria, but the cauliflower mosaic virus promoter also transferred to gut bacteria. So what that means is if the gene 6 is embedded inside our gut bacteria, then it can be producing, theoretically, the viral proteins inside our own gut. Long after we stop eating genetically modified soy, we may have these viral proteins produced from the DNA that has been transformed by genetically engineered foods. And so we have the potential for these viral proteins to be produced inside of us, and because the cauliflower mosaic virus promoter works also in bacteria, it could turn on other genes inside the bacterial DNA.